Dear future family, here's a few things you need to know if you wanna be my one and only all my life. Take me on a walk, I deserve it, y'all. I see you got my leash, but don't forget my ball. Cause if you treat me best, I'll be the perfect pet. Love and snuggle me, love and snuggle me. You got the couch and bed? Well, baby, I don't shed. So go ahead and take me home and let me rest my head. They train me how to sit, just like the perfect pet. Bark along with me, bark along with me. You gotta know how to treat me like your best friend. Even when I maybe break wind, tell me everything's alright. Dear future family, here's a few things you need to know if you wanna be my one and only all my life. Dear future family, if you wanna rub me on my belly, simply take me home and love me each and every night. Each and every night, I firmly close my eyes, dreaming of the day I take my final freedom ride. I'm ready for a home, you know I need a home. Apply for me, yes, apply for me. You gotta know how to treat me like your best friend. Even when I maybe break wind, tell me everything's alright. Dear future family, here's a few things you'll need to know if you wanna be my one and only all my life. Dear future family, please rescue me, don't leave me lonely, and tell your friends to please adopt and never buy. I will be sleeping on the left side of the bed. Gotta take the pillow, I need it for my head. I hope you do not mind, I like the biggest kind. Buy me a king, buy me a king. You gotta know how to treat me like your best friend. Even when I maybe break wind, tell me everything's alright. Dear future family, here's a few things you need to know if you wanna be my one and only all my life. Dear future family, if you wanna rub me on my belly, simply take me home and love me each and every night. Future family, adopt me tonight.
Find your future family at the SPCA of Anne Arundel County.
Dear future family, here's a few things you need to know if you wanna be my one and only all my life. Dear future family, if you wanna rub me on my belly, simply take me home and love me each and every night.
Hello and welcome back to the Potluck Show. We are used to seeing all the glamour and glitter that's in front of the screen, in front of the cameras. And I'm sure many of us who are in the field do know what goes on behind the scene. But today we get to meet somebody who is the mover and shaker of all things behind the screen of many, many events. And she's had so many events all over the country and all over the networks, major networks of our country. Today we get to meet the person who makes it all happen. Felicia Barlow Clar. Welcome to the show, Felicia.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
Yes, thank you. After a long time. You do a lot behind the shows, and you have done a lot and since we last had you on the show. But just tell me when it all began.
Well, I'd have to go back to when I was 9 years old. Like in my mind, when it all began was one of the first concerts that my dad took me to was the Osmond Brothers. And I was just enthralled with that. And then he took my brother and I to see Sonny and Cher, and I was always interested in how they were making it happen on stage.
Right.
So that was when I first fell in love with entertainment.
And most people want to be in front, like, be them. But your interest was in how to produce it, how did that come about? Like,
Well, it was, but then I went through a flow also where I wanted to be a singer as well, so I did study a lot. But the more I got into that, the more I realized I was an introvert and didn't really want to be on stage and perform in front of people. And I always had a fascination with how they made it happen. Like I remember going to see Miss Saigon at the Kennedy Center and wondering how that helicopter came down.
Right.
If you've seen the show, I mean, it's amazing.
yes. So that's when you wanted to do things behind the scenes
Yes.
and get your hands into it. And please list a few of the things major things you have done, because I don't want to take it away from you because you've done so much.
Well, I've worked for other people, so it's not necessarily me producing it, but I worked at a company that does most of the presidential inaugurations, so that was probably one of the bigger things that I've done and more of the stressful. And that's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week endeavor.
Yeah. How many of those have you done?
I've only done the one. Yeah.
Which was when?
It was back in 2005, so it was Bush
Right.
the second.
And did you get to meet the president?
I didn't get to meet him, but we were lucky enough that they let us go, which is very unusual that they let us go to the inaugural balls.
Oh, fantastic. That
yeah.
must be one of a kind of experience, right?
Yeah, it's very interesting to just see how it all happens. And, being a DCite my whole entire life, to be in that whole political scene and watching, the magic happen of politics.
And what was the first major production that you were involved in or you did by yourself that had a major impact on you?
Honestly, the first one I did, like all by myself from scratch, was the Women in Film and Video Gala back in, I think it was 2005 that I did it, when I was working at that same company that did the presidential inaugurations.
Tell us something a little bit about WIFV, which is Women in Film and Video.
It's a great organization for the area. It's I would say the hub organization for the Mid-Atlantic, for anybody interested in being in production and screenwriting and anything having to do with not only film and video, but like I said, I've kind of moved into the live event, but it's so many of the same skills, the audio visual, script writing, MCs.
Tell us about the gala that you did all on your own the first time. I mean, what were the biggest challenges you faced?
Getting the company I worked for to give me a stage set and all the labor for free.
Ooh.
Because the gala was always a fundraiser for women in film, so it had to be all donated. But I was able to get the company to see, kind of the marketing endeavor it was for them. In fact, Women in Film and Video still uses the Step and Repeat banner from 2005 that we made for that gala.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, but it was at the Ronald Reagan building, which is very challenging because it's union. It's very hard to get in and out of because it's a government building, so the way they had to get the trucks in and out of the building.
And tell us about your pet project that you have done. I know there are several.
I would say
the production aspect of it, and then we'll touch on other things.
I'm thinking Celebration of Life. That's why I'm not sure which one you.
Celebration of Life is outside the entertainment field, but in your entertainment field, you've done a couple of very memorable ones.
Yeah, I have. And the one that's closest to my heart is the SPCA
Tell us more about
video. A group of us at the SPCA, all volunteers, got together because we wanted to do a marketing video to help the SPCA.
By the way, SPCA is the Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Animals.
Yes.
Yes.
And this is the one in Annapolis that does not get any funding from anything outside of the community. It's all within our community that we build this money for it. And so a lot of very active volunteers doing things, and a group of us work in production. So Tom Hamlet took Meghan Trainor video and wrote a parody of her lyrics for Dear Future Family. I think the song is actually called Dear Future Husband, but he changed it to Dear Future Family, and it's all about pet adoption. Lisa Clark and I worked together to put it all together, the production. I worked with the volunteers that did decor. We really looked at the video to see what aspects were done, and we had a fence there that we recreated the fence with the pink flowers. We had volunteers that were willing to dance and do whatever was needed on stage.
So it's a whole slew of a music video that you did.
Yeah, and it's definitely a parody of everything. Like we start with the opening shots of Tom on a little bicycle, which if you've seen the video, a child's riding a bicycle.
Right.
So it's all humorous as well.
That's wonderful. And did you have any animals in it?
Oh, lots of animals. Yeah, the
Yes.
SPCA animals, which all the ones that were in the video have been adopted. We even had a pig in it.
Fantastic. So you had a great impact on that.
Yes.
And also it's something that you can use again and again?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, even though the song, is a few years old, it can still be used. In fact, they show it in the lobby at the SPCA on a loop.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one. And
Yeah.
tell me about the show you did for PBS.
I worked with a woman who was also on the board with me of Women in Film and Video. It was actually her film about an artist that she knew, and it was the woman passed away a few years ago, but Anna Campbell Bliss. It was called Arc of Light, a portrait of Anna Campbell Bliss. And I'd have to say Sid Collins Walker was really the brains behind it and got it on PBS, did all of the work, but I worked with her very closely to kind of mesh out what the story was, because Anna was a real pioneer in what she did. She used mathematics to create her artwork, so it's
Wow.
pretty fascinating.
Right.
She's definitely ahead of her time.
And you got to meet her. The
I
artist.
did not get to meet her. She lived out in Colorado at the time.
Oh.
I did local interviews with people that worked with her.
And what was fascinating about her that you found, very intriguing?
I'm a big feminist and about empowering women and
Right.
women that are leaders. Like I have a whole Pinterest board all about women that were like the beginning of something, women that started whatever the crescendo was and whatever they were doing. And I could see that Anna was a person that was one of the first not only to use mathematics and science, but also computers.
Right. And that was fascinating for you.
It was fascinating to see somebody
using
doing that. Yeah.
Right. And more so in an art aspect of it, right? Like
Yes.
adapted for art.
Yes.
And you mentioned something about your Facebook group that you just started and it's still going. Tell us more about that.
I started that under the auspices of WIF, as Women in Film, as the group, because when Facebook first came out, that's when we did this group. And they changed the algorithms, they changed how you do things. And so Women in Film started their own separate group, and I wanted to keep this group growing because at the time I had 12,000 people in it, and from around the world. And it's very
this is
empowering.
like, what, 10, 15 years ago?
Probably 10 or 11 years ago. Yeah. And I didn't want it to just go away. At the time, there was no way to mesh the two groups together.
Right.
So I decided to keep it. Eventually, I was able to change the name. At first, I couldn't change the name of it, so it was always Women in Film and Video, but more and more people found us. So I'm very discretionary now about who can get in it. I want like serious people in the industry, people that are all about empowering women. So it's a private group. I have to approve people coming into it, all of their posts. But I just find it really empowering to see what people are doing. Men are welcome in it, and there are a lot of men that support and completely get what we're trying to do in the group.
Right. And what is it you're trying to do in the group?
Empower women around the globe. There's a lot of women that work in third world countries that are constantly asking me questions about what can I do to get started.
And so basically what is it that they have to do? Because the title is Women in Film. Do they have to be a filmmaker or acting in it or something, a writer, woman writer? Or what aspect do you consider for them to be admitted into the group?
Most of the women are that. I have a question on there asking why they want to join, and it's always interesting to me that women are the ones that will put the most thorough, thought out answers. I work in the industry, I do this, I do that, I want to empower women, I want to network. Men, I don't mean this disparagingly to men, but men will be like, why do you want to join the group? Because I like film. I mean, it's something very simple and basic. So,
Right.
So the women, it's very easy.
Yeah, we like to talk.
Yeah, yes. And I think also, this is something I found out being on the board of Women in Film. We had a discussion one time about applying for jobs. Say the job says, you have to do X, Y, and Z. Women will think they have to do X, Y, and Z and have the education and then have this, whereas men are like, well, I've, done one aspect of that, and they apply. It's just a confidence thing and a very different, I think, approach to the world.
And you have a global presence?
Yes.
How many people do you think now?
There's more than 14,000.
Oh, wow.
I get at least 200 requests, I'd say, every week and a half.
Well, that should keep you busy.
It does. So I have to kind of
Vetting that.
block my time how I'm doing things.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations.
Thank
And does Women in Film want to, use your talent as the production aspect of your talent to support some of these people who are members or who sign in to be part of film, or you just encourage people who are already doing things?
I think it's a little bit of both, because there's some women that just say that they're interested and want to know how to get started, and then there's others. I actually stumbled upon a woman. She's a member of the group, and I was looking through pictures after the Oscars, and there she was on the red carpet. And I posted the picture in the group. I'm like, oh look, it's so and so, and here she is on the red carpet.
Oh, wonderful!
Yeah.
Surprise for you.
Yeah,
that's great.
yeah.
Going to your back to your production skills. Is there anything that you want to do that you haven't already tried?
Oh, gosh, there's a lot of things.
Like what?
I'm very much a visionary and entrepreneurial. So, well, the thing closest to my heart now is the celebration of life event planning.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What is Celebration of Life about? How did it come about?
It came about because my stepfather and my sister both passed away within the past 2 years now, going on 2 years. And going into the process of planning a funeral, each time it was like they kind of handed me a template. And if anybody met my sister, she was anything but a template. She was the most unique person I've ever met.
Outside
She
the
was,
box.
oh, and she was the funniest person I've ever met. Yeah, and my stepfather was like a real pioneer in the DC community. So none of the services really struck me that they were very personal. So with my sister, I think because I am an event producer, I was able to take the structure they gave me and really curtail it and personalize it somewhat.
Right.
So she was very big into old country music, so I had a lot of the songs that I knew she loved, and people crying their eyes out and everything, very touching, and spoke to who she was in that aspect. But she was also, like I said, the funniest person I ever met. And at the end, I asked her children what song they would like. And they're like, well, every day when she drove us to and from school, we had to listen to Mr. Boombastic, the Shaggy song. And I remember she would send me the video all the time of Mr. Bean dancing to Mr. Boombastic.
Oh, that's funny.
So we had in the program that the last song was a special selection from her children. And so we played Mr. Boombastic, and we all had a pact the day before that we were going to get up and dance to it because it's what she would have wanted.
Right.
So you could kind of look out into the group of people when we stood up and we were dancing to this song, kind of going, what's going on here? Why are they playing this song, and why are they all dancing this goofy? We were trying to dance like Mr. Bean.
Yeah.
And the people that knew my sister and knew our family immediately got it, rushed up and started dancing with us. And so the nice thing about it was that everybody ended with that sense of joy that I think my sister brought into a room with her humor.
So you didn't let just the grief settle,
right,
and have people in total mourning rather than, so that's why it's called Celebration of Life.
Right. And that's what's happening in the funeral industry, is that more and more people are being cremated, and the funeral industry, a lot of them they're not keeping up with these celebrations, and there's a whole positive death movement right now. Like when I started getting into this, I started doing all this research. I'm like, there's death cafes out there, there's death doulas, there's conversations starting. I just participated in the first of its kind expo in November in DC, because Americans, I think, are realizing they have their own stories to tell. And we're all facing mortality at some point. Nobody's getting out of this.
Yeah, but the funeral, the traditional way, is big business. Do you think they are pretty resistant to this kind of change?
Yes,
they are.
I do. But they're only needed for certain things. At least in the state of Maryland, they're needed for a death certificate and the transport of the body. That's all you need a funeral home for.
Right.
So there's actually a rise in home funerals, green burials. It's kind of going back to what it used to be. I mean, way back in the pioneer days, everybody did burials at home.
Yes.
And it is moving backwards.
So you're taking it from a money-making structured business to back to humanizing it, basically.
Yes.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a great word to put on it.
Yeah. And how did you handle your stepfather's funeral?
My stepfather's was a little bit different because he was 90-something years old. He didn't know as many people. But I have to say the whole family and people that were still around came to see it. We had a lot of the pictures from his days working at the International Club in DC, which was a very prestigious club. But I was really distraught. I was very close to my stepfather. So didn't do as much. I'd say the one thing that stands out that we did do for him is his favorite color was red, and we all wore red. So when people walked in even that day, they're like, I didn't get the memo that we were supposed to wear red. And I'm like, sorry.
Yeah, no black, celebrate life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a whole different thought process that was born in you, I think probably from your sister.
Yes.
That's where it came from, because funerals and celebrations have never gone hand in glove together. But I think you're saying times are changing now, probably.
I think so.
For the better. And what did you see in the expo that struck you as, wow?
The welcoming of it. There was 150 participants. It was a senior community, so mostly seniors, some younger, but nobody like upset that they were there. There were so many topics covered, and everybody really interested in the topic. Interested in. I'm now on a board of the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Maryland, and I had a table next to that group, and the interest in that group alone, which is all about the alternatives, and not having to spend tons of money for a funeral.
Yeah, that's the key.
Yeah.
I think you don't need to.
Yeah.
Because it's become morbid sometimes.
It is, and the funeral industry has had a stranglehold
Yes.
and everything. They don't want you to know that you don't need them for everything.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, first-hand experience was when my dad passed away, and you realize they tried to sell you all kinds of things.
Yeah,
It's those slick oil salesmen, kind of.
it can be. And honestly, we still have a lot of that stuff sitting around that we purchased, for both
Exactly,
funerals.
yeah.
And I'm like, we don't need 150 prayer cards.
Yeah. Especially for those who are gone. They're gone.
Right.
Keep them in your hearts, in your memories.
And that's what I realized too with the celebration of life. It's about their story, but it's about us. And we're gonna, I know with me, I'm still grieving every day for my stepfather and my sister, and I realize it's a part of who I am now, and I'm going to be grieving every day.
Yes.
And it comes up at the oddest times, like I find myself getting a little weepy now. But that doesn't need to be that day that we're grieving.
True.
Yeah.
That's I mean, how many people out there are ready to accept this change, do you think? Are there people who oppose it, other than the funeral homes?
In this movement, I'm not finding any. I mean, there's a rise in the death cafes. Like we have one in Annapolis. Annapolis is a pretty small town. Actually, we have two in Annapolis. I just found out in a town that.
And the seniors are welcoming those?
Everybody's welcoming those. Those are not just for seniors. The death cafe is a really interesting concept that started over. I'm not sure if it's Norway or the Netherlands. But it's a place, it's not a grief group, it's a group that talks about death and mortality, and it doesn't have an agenda. So when you go in, it's whatever the group kind of makes it to be at that gathering.
So it kind of normalizes what is inevitable.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Yep.
So how many do we have of death cafes in the U.S.? Would you have any idea?
I don't even know. I mean, there's a website for it, because if you call yourself a death cafe, they actually have a set kind of way they want you to present it. And one of the things is that you have to have cake.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, hey, who doesn't want cake? What else is
It's an interesting
tradition?
concept. That's sort of the only thing, is the cake and the refreshments, and then not having an agenda.
And they meet often, these people?
Yeah. The one in Annapolis that I attended meets every month, and then there's another one I just found out that looks like it meets every other week.
Interesting.
But if you look up the website for death cafes, they're everywhere around the world.
Yeah, well, if it started in Europe, it must have spread, if it's come here. But besides that, which is, that's something close to your heart, in terms of production, going back to, because that's what you're great at, what are you in the middle of right now?
That is what I'm focused on right now, is creating this division of my business. I've had a business, Barlow Entertainment, for more than 6 years. I changed the name of it years ago and started focusing on corporate events and entertainment booking. So that's what I've done the last 6 or so years.
Right.
And then this is kind of a division of that now. Epilogue Tributes is a division.
Epilogue Tributes?
That's what I'm calling the division for the celebration of life.
Okay, all right. Yeah, good to know.
Yeah.
Do you have a website for that?
Not yet. I have the domain name, celebratingthedash.com, but I haven't created it yet. But I do have one for Barlow Entertainment.
Okay, and we'll put it on the screen.
Okay.
And so if people need to reach out to you to find out more information, so you will, through this company division that you've made, you will be able to help others follow what you did for your loved one.
Yes.
Something
and
like that, an event.
Yeah. And that's why I say it's about telling somebody's story. Everybody has a story.
Exactly.
And most people have no clue what somebody is completely about. Even our
Right.
most close loved ones, we don't know everything about them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of it, is wanting to actually get into the pre-planning stages. So it should be not up to somebody else to plan our memorial services, but that's what we do.
So possibly in the Death Cafe, you could discuss with people how they want it to be, couldn't you?
Yeah, we do discuss some of it. I mean, part of the agenda also is the non-agenda is that you're not really supposed to be there to promote any kind of business, but it has come up in conversation because there's a lot of death doulas within these death cafes
Tell
too.
us about death doulas. What do they do?
I don't know a whole lot because I'm just starting to meet so many of them. I know one thing they do is they will sit with people in hospice care and like be a loved one, and if a loved one's not there, or if the loved one has to go home, and talk about the process, talk about end of life, actually do some of what I do is planning. You know,
That's interesting.
yeah.
And so if they come and exchange ideas in these death cafes with the people,
Yes.
that gives them an idea of, hey, there is another way to do this.
Yeah, and I think just talk about, like I said, the end of mortality that we're so afraid to discuss. We live in such a youth-centric society. America's all about youth.
Yeah. Because aging is treated as a disease,
Yes.
sadly. It's not.
Right.
You know, you got to be lucky to be aging and alive and not 6 feet under.
Right.
That's what
Like
I
honoring, like, you know, honoring the wrinkles that we have and
Exactly.
going, you know, I earned these.
think. Yeah. It's a lifetime of experience.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
But then do you I mean, help with this kind of vision change for people?
That's what I'm working on. You know, when I go and market my business, so at first I was like, well, how do I go in and do networking events and talk about funerals? And I work with the coach, and she's like, you're not talking about funerals, you're talking about joy. You brought joy to your sister's service. I'm like,
Of it. That's wonderful.
Yes.
And well, good luck to all your ventures, and I hope you will come back and tell us how this new venture is going on and how everybody can, you know, probably celebrate
thank
our
you.
existence.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being our guest, and hope you enjoyed this segment of the Potluck Show. You can catch all of our previous shows that have aired on www.potluck-online.org, and there will be more information, and you'll get to see the video that Felicia did for the SPCA during this past show. And if you have any interest, we will put in Felicia's website on the screen so you can contact her. If you're interested in the celebration of life transition, of celebrating the person when they are ready to say goodbye. Well, thank you very much, and hope to see you again in the next segment of the Potluck Show. Bye.